So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Virginia Reading League chapter event. We have members from Virginia Literacy Partnerships who will be joining us to share about the new state literacy screener.
Hi, everyone. A warm welcome from the Virginia chapter of the Reading League. I am Tisha Hayes. I am the current president of our chapter, and I see so many familiar names in our Zoom room tonight. So hello to you all. Welcome. I also want to give a quick shout out to our board members, especially our activities committee and Julia Kohler, who took lead on organizing this event for us tonight. All right, Julia, thank you. So just very briefly, because I know we're all here to hear from the VLP team, but as a chapter, our vision is that every educator will be prepared to implement evidence-based practices to meet the diverse profiles of all students with the goal of becoming skilled lifelong readers. And as you'll see on the next slide, our mission provides a bit more specificity to that vision. And with that in mind, I will move it on to why we're all here tonight, in that our mission brings us to the new Virginia Literacy Screener.
Thank you, Tisha. So this evening, we have three presenters with us. They are going to be spending the bulk of their time giving an overview of the new screener. If you have questions for them that are not answered during their time, please feel free to put them in the chat. There are other members of VLP here that can help respond in the chat. And if an answer is not able to be provided this evening, we will be downloading those questions and working to get answers for you. So our first presenter is Casey Stern, and she is an outreach specialist for VLP. We have Austin Hecker, who is the coordinator for America Reads at VLP. And then also Jennifer McSweeney, who is a regional literacy coach. So I am going to turn it over to our amazing presenters this evening.
Thank you. Let's get started. Good evening and welcome to this webinar to learn more about the UVA Virginia Literacy Partnerships Office and what we are working on to provide Virginia with a new literacy screener. We are happy to have you all here tonight, and we look forward to talking to you about literacy assessments. Before we begin, we'd like to introduce ourselves. I am Jennifer McSweeney, and I'm working with the VLP as a regional literacy coach, only within the last 2 months. So this is still kind of a new position for me. I'm really excited to be here. I've taught 2nd, 3rd, and 6th through 8th grades, and I was a school and division literacy specialist before beginning my work with UVA. I'm excited about the work that we're doing in the office, and I'm hoping to support and make a difference for schools and teachers. We also have Austin Hecker here, who I think is trying to share our screen.
Yes, I think I've done that successfully. Can you see it? Just give me a thumbs up if you can see it.
No.
No. Okay. I thought I had done that successfully. Let me check at it right now. Share.
There we go.
Is it working now?
Yes, we got it.
Awesome. Okay. I'm Austin Hecker. I am a member of the Virginia Literacy Partnerships team. I am also the coordinator of the America Reads tutoring program at UVA. Previously, I've been a 5th grade teacher. I've taught English for speakers of other languages, K through 8, and I've taught a reading intervention program at the middle school level. But like many of you, I've worn a lot of hats. I wear a lot of hats, but a lot of my job titles are just titles. They don't fully encompass why we're here and what we do. And I know that I can speak for my colleagues in that what we do from day to day is we work on behalf of our students and our children. Some days that looks like designing items for our revised literacy screener. Some days that looks like listening to a student or a teacher vent about a difficult day. Sometimes that looks like reading Sandra Boynton or Mo Willems with my own little girl. And today it meant driving to my husband's school and working from his classroom because my internet went out at home. And so you probably see like the light changed in my background because it's a motion sensor light. So it's one of those days, but it's all part of the job. And we're here because we love children. We know the critical importance of literacy, and I'm really excited to share a bit of that passion and a bit of our work with you tonight.
And we also have Casey Stern with us tonight.
Good evening. My name is Casey Stern. I am coming to you from Roanoke City, so I am relatively local. I was last a district literacy specialist in Roanoke City. I've been a classroom teacher, special ed teacher, reading specialist, and an instructional coach as well. And like Austin said, we're here because we love what we do and we love the kids. And I will say, for one, I've had a fairly normal day, so we're going to knock on wood that continues and that at least one of us has internet through the rest of the presentation.
All right, so like we said, we're excited to be here. We can go to the next slide, Austin. All right, so our agenda tonight includes talking about why it is important to administer new screener assessments and taking a deep look into the new screener that will be replacing the current PALS assessment. The new acronym VALS means Virginia Literacy and Language Screening System. Then we're going to share resources that you can use now and when you have new data from VALS in the upcoming years. We will answer some questions using the chat feature. Like we said earlier, we have other members here to help monitor the chat, so feel free to put your questions in there. And if there's something we can't answer, we will get to it later for certain. Tonight, we're only going to be talking about using the new literacy screener with the hope of giving you useful information about what to expect. Next slide. So it's important to know and understand why the screener is being revised and why this change is needed. The new VALS screener is going to align with current research and science-based reading instruction. This science is based on evidence across the fields of cognitive psychology, cognitive science, educational psychology, and linguistics. Next slide. This includes decades of research that demonstrates the need for assessment and instructional practices that students need to become effective readers. These practices include explicit instruction that is direct, using an I do, we do, you do model to ensure that students are engaged and given time to see modeling, then try it with support and try it on their own. It includes a systematic approach to introducing skills and concepts when students need them with a scope and sequence that is coherent and makes sense. Students are given multiple opportunities to respond through practicing orally and in writing. In addition to explicit instruction, all students should be screened for early prevention and intervention using a research-validated screening assessment. Assessment data should be collected systematically to monitor student progress in response to instruction. With this practice is also going to come scaffolding and instructive feedback from the teacher to correct misconceptions and provide scaffolding and differentiation when needed. Make sure our students are getting what they need. Okay, next slide. So first, let's review the simple view of reading. Decoding times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. And I'm sure everyone here has seen this many times, but this is the ultimate goal that we have for students, is to be able to read and understand what they're reading. Remember that if any part of the equation is lacking or missing, it impacts the entire product of reading comprehension. So it's a good idea to reflect on this reading view now, and then to ensure that we are including all components of literacy in our instruction. And we're going to look at a next slide that shows us an expanded view of the simple view of reading. So in this expanded view, we see the components of decoding and language comprehension again, and that this includes instruction that works reciprocally back and forth to connect, to ensure that students can read and spell words with accuracy, and that they can understand vocabulary, linguistic concepts of language and sentences, and to read fluently, again, for that ultimate goal of understanding what they read and achieving reading comprehension. Next slide. So this reading comprehension model is our version of the simple view of reading integrated with the reading rope and all of its components. Again, you see a spiral here and interlocking components that must be present to ensure that students can read. So reading comprehension is a product of and part of decoding and language comprehension. So what does all this mean for the VLP new literacy screener and its revisions? Let's go ahead and take a look. Next slide. All right, so we're used to the PALS screener. If you take a look at this version of our reading rope, you can see that the current PALS screener is outlined by the red box. And here you see that it assesses decoding and encoding through subtests of spelling, word lists, oral reading fluency passages, and letters and sounds knowledge. The revised screener is going to encompass both components of decoding, encoding, and language comprehension. And that's outlined by the green rectangle there. So you can see the difference in the screeners. These revisions are going to allow for accurate analyzing of assessment so we can truly figure out where students are and what they need to reach that goal of reading comprehension. Okay, next slide. The new VAL screener is being revised for several reasons. These include aligning with current research and research evidence, an expanded coverage of skills, extending the use of the screener in preschool for 3-year-olds, accurately identifying students at risk of developed reading difficulties so we can catch them quickly, providing valuable information to teachers that can drive their instruction, allowing for measurement of growth over time, and including an improved scoring system. The Spanish measure is not going to be a literal translation of the screener subtests, but a parallel measure of reading skills. All right, next slide. So before we move on to looking at the screener in detail, here's an overview of the currently proposed subtests for different grade levels. Again, these are proposed and information is being piloted and data is being looked at right now. So these might not be all the subtests that are used. These are the proposed subtests. Note that there are some differences in what is assessed for 3 and 4-year-olds, kindergarten, and grades 1 to 3. These subtests address skills appropriate for those ages and grade levels, and with some overlap, and are included in multiple grade levels. Now that we have thought about the why behind a new Virginia literacy screener, Austin is going to share the how of VALs. Go ahead, Austin.
Perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer already stated, the goal of this new screener is to provide a more comprehensive picture of our students' reading needs. And the goal of this revised screener is not only to accurately identify students who are at risk of reading difficulties, but also to help facilitate greater alignment with current research, as well as vertical alignment across grade bands. I'm going to spend a few minutes walking through the various subtests that are currently being piloted as a part of the new screener. But as Jennifer noted, it is important to note that all of these subtests that are being piloted, and there are a lot of them, may or may not be included in the final revised screener. We have a team that's analyzing the data from pilot testing to ensure that the subtests that end up on the final revised screener are going to give us the most useful information for early identification and instructional purposes. So I'm going to very briefly cover each of these subtests, but know that more information is available through the resources that Casey is going to cover next after me. Okay, so first let's take a look at the code-based subtests that are part of the piloted screener. Remember that one of the key differences between legacy PALS and the revised screener is that we are now examining the subskills involved in language comprehension in addition to the subskills required for encoding and decoding. The code-based subtests include measures for phonological awareness, alphabet knowledge, decoding, and encoding. So first, let's look at alphabet knowledge. We know that alphabet knowledge is predictive of later reading and spelling abilities. And that includes knowledge of letter names and letter sounds. So this is probably pretty familiar. Both of these subtests are pretty straightforward. With letter naming, the student is directed to name each letter. As you can see in the triangle graphic on the left side of the screen, the subtest is going to be administered with students in pre-K 3, pre-K 4, and kindergarten. We use a mix of upper and lowercase letters, and the test administrator can use a piece of cardstock to help reveal the letters line by line and assist the student with tracking. The administrator can also point to a letter if a student gets off track. All responses are recorded as either correct, incorrect, self-corrections, which are ultimately correct, or no response. For both alphabet knowledge subtests, reversals are incorrect. The other alphabet knowledge subtest is on letter sounds. And again, it's pretty straightforward. This subtest is administered with students in grades pre-K 3 through the first grade. We provide a sample item for this subtest with the letter M so that we can model the task before students actually engage with the subtest. The test administrator can redirect the child if they get off track. Certain letters, we know that certain letters can produce multiple sounds. So we are looking for the short sounds that are associated with each vowel and the hard sounds associated with the letters C and G. If the student produces another sound that a letter makes, the test administrator would prompt the student to provide another sound that the letter can make. There's a letter sound guide that's available through the digital platform for test administrators if there are questions around what sounds we're looking for. And again, the test administrator can use a piece of cardstock to help with keeping track of line by line. Answers are again scored as correct, incorrect, self-corrections, which are again counted as correct, or no response. Okay, so moving into the subtest for phonological awareness, there are 5 subtests that are currently being piloted within phonological awareness, including syllable segmenting, beginning sounds matching, beginning sounds expressive, phoneme blending, and phoneme segmenting. So syllable segmenting measures a student's ability to segment or break apart 2- and 3-syllable words. The subtest is administered to students in pre-K 3 and pre-K 4. The test administrator would supply the word and the student must break the word into its component syllables. There are pictures to accompany these words. And again, the task is modeled through sample items. And again, scores include correct, incorrect, self-corrections, or no response. The beginning sounds matching subtest, which should be somewhat familiar to those of you familiar with Legacy PALS, measures the student's ability to identify words with the same beginning sound. So the test administrator would say, I'm going to name some pictures and I want you to point to the pictures that begin with the same sound. The administrator models how it's done with the practice items, and the subtest is administered to students in pre-K 3. The beginning sounds expressive subtest measures the student's ability to produce the beginning sound of a word or to provide a word that starts with the same sound. So the test administrator would say, I'm going to say a word. I want you to listen and tell me the first sound that you hear in the word or a word that starts with the same sound. This is modeled with the practice item, and items are scored as correct, incorrect, self-corrections, or no response. And this subtest is utilized with students in pre-K 4 and kindergarten. The phoneme blending subtest measures the student's ability to blend together 3 phoneme words. The test administrator would say, I'm going to say a word one sound at a time. I want you to tell me the word that the sounds make. This process is modeled with practice items. And again, responses are either correct, incorrect, self-corrections, or no response. And this subtest is administered with students in pre-K 4 and kindergarten. There we go. The last phonological awareness subtest is a measure of phoneme segmenting. It's essentially the flipped version of the blending task that I just covered. This time, the test administrator would provide the word and direct the student to identify the sounds that they hear within the word. And this subtest is used with students in grades K through 3. Student responses here are either correct or incorrect. There is no partial credit with phoneme segmenting. So moving into decoding, our measures of decoding, there are 2 subtests. First, let's look at decoding real words. The decoding real words subtest measures the student's ability to read real words containing common conventions. Students read through the list and responses are scored as correct, incorrect, self-corrections, which are counted as correct, or no response. And this subtest is administered with students in grades kindergarten through 3rd grade. And then there's a partner decoding subtest for pseudo words. It's very much like the decoding real word subtest. The key difference is that the words are not real. So students have to apply their phonics knowledge in order to decode these unfamiliar words. Like the decoding real words task, the decoding pseudo word subtest is administered to students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. And these words integrate common conventions aligned with grade level expectations. All right, so encoding, this is pretty straightforward. This involves a spelling list. Students are asked to spell words from a grade level list, and then student responses can help indicate which orthographic conventions they have mastered and which conventions still need additional support. The encoding subtest is administered with students in grades kindergarten through 3rd grade. And right now these words list contain 20 words, but that will likely be cut down once we analyze data from pilot testing. And then the last measure that kind of overlaps between our decoding and encoding and language comprehension, or serves as that bridge, is a measure of oral reading fluency. So this is looking at reading fluency within connected text. The oral reading fluency subtest measures the student's accuracy and rate while reading a decodable text. This subtest is administered with students in grades 1 through 3. The student reads aloud a grade level passage while the teacher listens and times the student and notes any errors. This data gives us the student's correct words read per minute. We've created several equivalent passages for each grade level so that students are reading a different passage during the fall, winter, and spring administrations of the screener. Okay, so as previously noted, we know that language comprehension plays an equally important role in reading comprehension. So we have included several measures of language comprehension within the newly revised screener as well. These subtests include vocabulary fluency, relational vocabulary, passage comprehension, and nonsense sentences. The vocabulary fluency subtest measures the student's ability to quickly name pictures. Students receive a score based on the number of pictures that are correctly named within a minute. Students must provide the specific name for the object in the picture. For example, if the picture is of a grasshopper and the student says bug, that is scored as incorrect. The subtest is used to measure the student's fluency with expressive vocabulary from pre-K 3 all the way through 3rd grade. The relational vocabulary subtest looks more at receptive vocabulary, and it measures the student's understanding of relational words and vocabulary by asking students to indicate a specific picture based on an oral description. So for example, I could show a student 4 pictures and ask them, point to the matching dogs. And so they would point to the picture of the dogs that match. The relational vocabulary subtest is untimed, so it's not a fluency measure, and it's used with students in pre-K 3, pre-K 4, and kindergarten. The passage comprehension subtest actually involves multiple components. So once a student hears a story that's read aloud from a passage, they will retell a story using the same illustrations. However, the story that the student tells can be different from the passage story. We are looking more so for the inclusion of certain elements as well as their use of expressive language. Students then answer 5 comprehension questions without referring to the illustrations. And these questions are open-ended to assess the student's use of expressive language. Then the younger students who take this subtest are also asked to choose the correct picture to match 4 sentences that are read aloud. In this way, the assessment measures their receptive as well as their expressive vocabulary and language. The nonsense sentences subtest measures students' syntactic and grammatical awareness as they repeat nonsense sentences that employ increasingly complex syntactical structures. The sentences vary in length as well as grammatical complexity, and students must repeat each sentence verbatim. It's actually really difficult. I struggle with that. Children's ability to repeat nonsense sentences has been shown to reflect the grammatical structures that students can accurately employ within their own conversational language and speech. So in this way, the nonsense sentences subtest assesses student knowledge of syntax and language structure, and this subtest is administered with students in grades kindergarten through 3rd grade. The print concept subtest measures a student's familiarity with concepts related to reading a book. So for example, the test administrator could put a book face down in front of a student and ask the student to show the front of the book. The administrator uses multiple prompts to gauge a student's knowledge of various print concepts in pre-K 3 and pre-K 4. And then lastly, the revised screener currently includes subtests for measuring the student's processing speed. Measures of rapid automized naming, or RAN, have been shown to be predictive of later word reading and passage reading fluency. And that fluent reading requires the student to quickly recognize letters, their associated sounds, and then blend them back into whole words while reading. So the purpose of rapid automized naming, or RAN, is to measure the student's ability to quickly and accurately retrieve information from memory. That's why these subtests utilize concepts that are already known. So for example, with younger students, we would use colors. Before beginning the subtest, the test administrator asks the students to identify the colors or the numbers or letters, depending on which task is being employed, to ensure that the student possesses the relevant background knowledge or information within memory in order for it to be an accurate measure of their processing speed. RAN is not something that should be directly taught. In fact, teaching RAN is not a good use of instructional time, but evidence demonstrates that it is predictive of later word reading and passage fluency. Okay, so to summarize, the new screener addresses 3 broad areas, including code-based literacy skills, language comprehension, and processing. These constructs are assessed using multiple subtests that align with current research regarding the requisite skills for reading comprehension. We aim to provide a tool that offers a lot of utility for teachers in identifying students who are at risk, as well as informing instructional practice. And again, it's worth saying that these subtests that are being currently piloted may not appear in the final revised screener. It just depends on what data shows us is the most useful as far as providing information for teachers. So now that we have covered the why and the how, I'm going to pass the baton over to Casey, and she's going to cover the what next.
Should remember to unmute myself first. All right, there we go. Thanks, Austin. So we've given you a ton of information so far, and a lot of it is similar, but a lot of it is different. So now what we're going to think about is, we know why we have a new screener. We know a little bit about what that new screener looks like, but we're going to show you some resources that can be used with the new assessment, and also some you can use for instruction right now. And one thing that we cannot reiterate enough is that the actual VALS assessment is going into a soft launch here. So we actually really need the data to tell us what is going to end up on that final test. So while we've shown you a lot, and we're going to show you some resources, there's a lot that has yet to be determined based on what the data tells us. So I just kind of want to preface with that. So go ahead and go on to the next slide. Perfect, thank you. So let's look at some resources associated with VALS itself first. Next slide. And a quick note about what is available now and also what's coming soon. So as you probably know, the pre-K language and literacy screener actually launched in fall 2022. So all of its associated resources are available now, and they're live on the website, which we'll show you where that comes up in a few minutes. What you see on the next few slides are all examples from the pre-K screener, because that's all final. All of the materials associated with the K3 screener will be available with its full launch in the fall of 2024. So as we see from here, just like with the current assessment system, there will be certification tutorials available. Because they're associated with the assessments, teachers must have a login, and I'll show you where that dashboard is in a minute. These are essentially online training resources that provide professional learning for teachers about how to administer and how to score the new assessment. This is a self-paced training that allows teachers to work through the content and on their own schedule. It's a great activity for teachers to do with one another or in a PLC as they learn about administering that new assessment. Teachers can log in and out at any time, and the tutorial will resume on the last slide they visited, so it saves your spot for you. So you can go back, back and forth. Next slide. The tutorial actually begins with an overview module that includes background on the subdomains that are measured by the screener at each level. So for example, for pre-K, you'll see all the domains, all the subtests for pre-K. For kindergarten, you'll see all of the subtests for that grade level. You got a small glimpse at some of that this evening, but the tutorial goes even more in depth and is specific, like I said, to that grade level. It also helps teachers to think through the logistics of assessing their students. So things like, what might a schedule look like? What are their procedures? How do I enter the scores? Really trying to help teachers maximize that efficiency so that it disrupts instruction the least. Next slide. Next, there are the subtest modules. So these provide the actual step-by-step instructions and the administration prompts, the scoring examples, and there's even screencasts of online scoring for each subtest. Each module also includes a video of a teacher administering and scoring each subtest so that teachers can watch the subtest in action. Next slide. At the end of each subtest module, teachers take a knowledge check that includes corrective feedback to help guide learning. At the end of the whole tutorial, there's a certification quiz to ensure that teachers have mastered administering the screener. We know that valid data comes from reliable administration. A score of 90% or greater is required to pass and receive the certificate. After completing the tutorial, though, it doesn't just shut down. Teachers can go in and out. They can come back to it at any time if they need to refresh their memory at any part. Next slide. We also know that a screener is only as useful as the data that it provides. That's really essentially where the rubber meets the road. The soft launch in the 2023 school year will help to determine what reports are needed and are most useful, but at the very least, there will be reports by teacher, by school, and by division. The VLP office is also always available to help support teachers in understanding how to best utilize the data that comes from the screener when it's fully launched. As you'll see in some of our immediately available resources later on, there's space where we can build into that based on the data we get. Next slide. Another layer of support that is available is a library of assessment videos that show exactly what it looks like to give each section of the screener. The pre-K library is available now, with K3 coming again with the full release in the fall of 2024. These also require teachers to log in to gain access. Next slide. So this is what it looks like. So once you have logged into your current PALS account, you're going to go to the dashboard and click on the professional learning and then select assessment videos. Next slide. For the tutorials, you're going to do the exact same thing. From that professional learning dropdown, click on tutorials and it will take you straight to what we currently have available. So like we keep referencing right now, we've got the brand new pre-K screener and we've got the PALS resources. When the full launch comes in fall 2024, everything will be updated. Next slide. All right, so those are our assessment resources, but what we have currently available is a large collection of resources that are available for instruction. So I'm going to touch on them briefly, but there will be a future session for the Reading League that goes a little bit more in depth. So next slide. A little bit of history, but our value series first launched in April of 2022, so it's getting ready to celebrate its birthday, but it's actually growing really rapidly. So it stands for the Virginia Assessment for Literacy, updated and expanded, and now we've got over 10 unique topics. We call these packages, and each package includes things like a professional learning guide, videos, infographics, webinars, just about all the resources that you might imagine. These are really designed to help practitioners in the field, whether you're a coach, whether you're a classroom teacher, whether you're a specialist, to help you get what you need, when you need it, and in a manner that you need it. Next slide. So these are our value packages that are already launched. Our very, very first was science-based reading research, and it was followed quickly by explicit instruction. Since then, we've built out to data literacy, language development, phonemic awareness, fluency, and we've got lots more coming. Next slide. So these are our packages that are currently in progress. So they are in different stages of development and review, but they'll launch on our website over the next few months. We've got a huge package coming on culturally and linguistically diverse students, another big one on phonics, vocabulary and oral language, kind of a gigantic package on reading comprehension is heading your way, as well as kind of a mini package on small group instruction, because we know that's really important and really relevant right now as well. Next slide. So these are the components of each of the packages that we have in the value series. The intro video is designed to be a 2 to 3 minute video that gives kind of a high level overview of the topic. The infographic actually does the same thing with kind of that high level overview, but sometimes it's easier if you're a coach or if you're kind of a teacher leader to stick an infographic in your friend's box or in a grade levels box than it is to get everybody in the same room to watch the video. So we really tried to build in options for professional learning. The webinar is probably the meatiest component, which gives a deeper dive into the topic. The white paper is also usually pretty meaty, and it helps to understand the research behind the topic that informed the content contained in the package. So if you really like learning some of like the actual concrete scientific research, that's where you'll want to go. Additional resources might include something like a family newsletter or something that you could hand out at a literacy night. It might be a podcast to listen to while you're driving to or from school or on your evening walk. And then the professional learning guide is actually one of the most unique features that we have available. And it's really designed to help coaches or teacher leaders or specialists who are leading a team to kind of dig deep into a topic. So there's a suggested kind of professional learning guide with some suggestions on activities you can do with the team. And then there's space for you to plan your own. Finally, each package has some instructional protocols, and this might range from just a couple to over 130. So these are essentially sample lesson plans that are guaranteed to be aligned with the research. And it's not designed to replace any part of your curriculum. It's designed to be as a kind of a resource of what really solid evidence-based research, evidence-based instruction looks like. Next slide. So like we've mentioned several times, these resources are available now, and they are available on the public site. So all you need to do to find them is go to literacy.virginia.edu, and you do not have to have a login or a password. So from literacy.virginia.edu, you're going to click on educators. Next slide. And then from there, hover over professional learning, and then you're going to click on value series. Next slide. That'll take you to a page that has kind of an intro video at the top. So if you scroll down, you're going to get to some blue boxes that look like this. And this is where the packages begin. Please feel free to share this far and wide. Our resources are available to everyone, and our only intent is to help teachers strengthen instruction for students. So if you've got a friend in Montana who needs some information about explicit instruction, send it their way. These are really designed to be applicable to everybody in all in all states. Next slide. And last but not least, please connect with us. You can find us via phone, email, or on social media. We also want to thank you for your time tonight. We know you all have busy lives. We know there are a lot of questions. A special shout out to our team in the chat. The three of us got to plan this presentation ahead of time, and they're doing the really heavy lifting of having to think on their feet with responding to questions. But we are all here for you to be accessible and to be helpful. We also want to thank you for what it is that you do every single day. We know that your job is busy and you've got personal lives and professional lives, and we know that it's hard work. But we like to think that it's all worth it, and we are here as a resource with whatever you may need. So I will hand it back over to the Reading League team.
Thank you all so much for your time this evening. Thank you to our presenters for putting this together, for so many that were able to join us this evening. And I'm going to share my slides again. I apologize.
So again, I just want to thank VLP, all of you members that are here tonight from the VLP office. I am Diane Lewis. I'm the membership chair for the Reading League Virginia. Thank you to my board members and colleagues out in the Zoom world here with me at the Reading League Virginia. I wanted to just make sure, many of you may already be members of the Reading League Virginia, but this is such an important time in our state with so much new learning. And we're going to continue to develop our relationship with VLP so that we can bring you the latest news so that you stay in the know. So if you are not currently a member, I encourage you to go to our website. The address is here on the slide. You can just type in the Reading League Virginia and it will come up in your Google search. Go to our website, click join, and I have exciting news because members now, our membership runs from end of August or September to September, just like the school year. And so right now we are going to cut our membership in half because only half the year is left. So $12.50. For $12.50, you can join the Reading League Virginia and you will get notice of all of our events. Tonight's event was for members and non-members, but we do have events that are exclusively for members. So I encourage you to join us, get some swag, tell everybody that you're a member of the Reading League Virginia, and be one of those leaders in your building around evidence-based practices. And again, thank you so much for your attendance tonight.
Thank you, Diane. Again, thank you all for being here this evening. I know it's a hectic time of year. Thank you for all of your questions in the chat. If there were ones that we weren't able to be answered, again, we will be downloading these questions and hope to get responses to you as soon as possible. So thank you again for your time this evening.